right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today to learn all about our latest announcement. We have teamed up with Aura as we both have a similar mission to help Amazon sellers succeed. And we know how difficult it is to make a profit on Amazon, especially with Amazon fees. And the good news is Aura and Ecom Engine are here to help. So without further ado, I will go ahead and first of all, just want to go through some housekeeping issues that we are recording this webinar. We do have the chat and Q&A available there, so feel free to post any questions or comments throughout the webinar. We'd love to have some live conversation. And at the end, we will have some special offers, so stay tuned for those. And we'll be sure to send out an email afterwards summarizing some of this, as well as with a link to the recording. So stay tuned, and we look forward to sharing with you all about this latest announcement. All right, so first of all, thanks for all of those RestockPro users who have joined the call. I definitely see some familiar names here on the attendee list, so thanks for joining. For those of you who are not familiar with RestockPro, it is Ecom Engine's FBA inventory management tool. And some other exciting news that we have this week is that our tool now supports the low inventory level fee. So again, we know how difficult it is to sell on Amazon, especially with all of the fees that are constantly being introduced. But now in RestockPro, you can calculate your historical days of supply and monitor your minimum inventory levels. So take a look at that, check it out in your restock suggestions, or reach out to us if you have any questions or want to see that in action, but we'll be sending out some more communication about that. But back to the real reason why you're all here today, I'm excited to share that RestockPro now integrates with Aura. And if you have not heard of Aura, it's an AI-powered Amazon repricer, a super slick tool, really easy to use. And we're getting some great results already from Amazon sellers who have already enabled this integration that just went live last week. So it's helping sellers to keep their cost per unit data seamlessly up to date automatically, which saves time and most importantly, allows sellers to really focus on improving their bottom line on Amazon. So we're really glad to be here today to share more details about all of this. We'll just take a minute to introduce ourselves. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Colleen Quattlebaum. I'm the Director of Marketing at Ecom Engine. I've been here for about 10 years, and I love helping Amazon sellers in any way that we can. And then Dylan and I have worked together as partners for many years. We've known each other for a while. He's one of the coolest guys in the industry, backed by a super smart and amazing team. But Dylan is the co-founder of Aura. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to talk about how you got started in this crazy Amazon world.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, so I'm Dylan. I'm one of the co-founders here. I've spent a third of my life in the Amazon seller space. May not be the coolest, but probably the nerdiest in the space. I say that, positively. But yeah, so I got started when at the time I was a personal trainer full-time. After high school, I tried to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. Knew I wanted to do my own thing. But I found myself in the gym a lot, became nationally certified, started to do that full-time, and realized I couldn't scale my time very well. And so I said, okay, well, let me find other alternatives. Eventually found the Amazon world, got into that, scaled it up, did the wholesale game. We launched the Wholesale Made Easy podcast, the first wholesale specific podcast, as well as the wholesale Facebook group. So actually we had 15,000 people, first Facebook group dedicated to wholesale. We did live sourcing for free every Tuesday for 2.5 years. Like, we put a lot into the industry, into the community, and eventually got into software. So I met my now co-founder via Instagram. I was DMing everyone who had a seemingly larger business than my own. And he was the first one to respond and say, hey, I was offering to pay money for time. They're like, he was like, hey, don't worry about the money. Let's just geek out and have fun. And ended up starting a software company together. And so now we're here 8-ish years later.
That's fantastic. And are you still selling Amazon today?
I'm not. So I did make the tough decision. So it's funny. I decided to go back to college full time as a finance major. I'm not anti-college like a lot of founders are. I think it depends. But was in school full time, had the business going. I was also working part time, actually really full time at another startup, trying to learn the ins and outs, learned a lot of what not to do. And then when this started to take off, I kind of had to re-engineer my life a little bit. And so left the startup. That didn't make any more sense. I wasn't learning anything more there, went all in. And then my senior year, college, just so much workload that I decided, you know what, I'm going to really triple down on software. That's where my heart is. And I shut down the Amazon business, which was a really tough decision. I didn't share that for like a year because I was worried about being judged. But in hindsight, the best decision for me.
And you're still so close, obviously, working with Amazon sellers, so you can marry your two passions, selling on Amazon and building software to help everyone. So
exactly.
But tell us a little bit about Aura and why you're passionate about the actual repricing side of Amazon.
Yeah, I like a lot of our industry because we exist in a world where you're drowning in data, and there's a lot of inefficiencies, and the average seller is non-technical. And when I say non-technical, I mean they're not a software engineer, which is understandable. Most people are not. So that creates a huge divide, a huge gap between what is possible and what actually gets done. And so for me, when we initially launched VinDriveCRM.com, that was our first software. And that was really built for us because that's what we did. It was designed for wholesale-based sellers, realized, okay, that's a small market. You can't really build a big business there. What thing really has true value here that if we could solve it better, we could have a meaningful positive impact? And for us, that was repricing, because especially at the time, 8-ish years ago, they're really cumbersome, they're really complicated. And a lot of what the success comes down to is you as the user understanding how to do it right. And there's a problem in the Amazon software space where design's not really at the forefront. Things are not really thought through, not just how they visually look, but how does it work? Have we, really thought about the workflows here in terms of how you accomplish task A, B, and C? A lot of times that's not really the case. And so for us, when we started, we basically pivoted over into Aura, into repricing, and we said, okay, well, what are the pillars we're going to stand on here as a company before even writing code? Well, the first one was going to be customer success. Most of the time it's outsourced. And I had been a seller. I had dealt with that and I was over it. And I said, no, we're going to do this the right way. And I built that out from scratch as one of the two co-founders. I did support full-time for the first 2.5-ish years, like honing that in. And we're known for that now. And you don't need to have a big team to do that. And so we've challenged a lot of things. Another thing was a good product. And when we say product, a lot of people think physical products, but software is a product. And a lot of what gets done in the Amazon software space is good engineering, which is the back-end code-based stuff. But the product, the actual tangible thing that the user is actually dealing with and working with, is not thought through very well. And so we wanted to kind of lean into that. And so for us, that's kind of been at the forefront of everything we do. Of course, amazing engineering on the back end, that's a given. But we wanted to just stand out and build products that allow sellers to close that gap that I mentioned between a lot of complexity and basically the user not having to deal with that, right? So for what we do a lot of times is we build features that abstract away the complexity for the end users. So instead of, your rule-based strategies on average have anywhere from 15 to 30 settings that the user has to set and hope they didn't make it wrong, right? But for Maven, when we relaunched 1.0, and we spent, for context, 18 months recently rebuilding the software from the ground up, completely new language, every line of code, everything, we wanted to find a way to say, well, how can we help sellers deal with the complexity, basically handle more scenarios as if there were 50 settings, but only give them one? So how do we create that level, right? So you get better performance by doing less work. That's kind of the world we try to operate in, this concept of technical leverage. And so we've spent the past 8 years just honing that in. And the most recent release, which is what we call 1.0, which is kind of tongue in cheek because we kind of think that Legacy Aura was a beta this whole time. I know it sounds funny, like 6-ish years later, but for us, it really was. And so we think we've been able to design something that gives us an incredible scalable foundation for users to add even more things on top of that. But yeah, for us, that's kind of the world we operate in.
Okay. And so you mentioned Maven.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, Maven is a feature within your Aura repricing tool.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah. So when we were rebuilding Aura from the ground up, we had the unique opportunity to kind of think from first principles and really define, like, what's the problem now? Because if, just because the software was built 8-ish years ago doesn't mean that all the decisions and assumptions made back then are still true. And so if you're going to rebuild it from the ground up, you might as well treat it as brand new and fix a bunch of things. And so we kind of sat down first and foremost and said, well, let's define the problems here. What are sellers struggling with? Well, for us, there's two. There's complexity and speed. You need to be able to handle far more scenarios, far more variables at a faster rate, near real time. That's kind of hard to do. And so we put our heads together and said, okay, well, complexity has really a lot to do with the repricing strategy side of things. Well, if I just give you more settings, that doesn't really fix the problem. Because here's what happens. If I say, hey, I want to make this rule-based strategy better, I have 3 levers I can pull. I can either add a new setting, remove a setting, or change the definition of a setting. Either one of those 3 will break everything for every user, because most of your settings are relative to another in your strategy. Meaning if I say, your competition type is the buy box, and everywhere in the pursuit section, it says when the competition does X. Well, competition relates to the buy box setting. So technically we're targeting the buy box. If I change the definition of the buy box, I fundamentally just change how your strategy will perform. So that doesn't really scale or work. And adding more and more settings to a custom strategy builder only overwhelms our end users. And that's not good. That's not good product. So we again said, okay, well, what is the problem here that we're trying to solve? Well, if you asked me a year ago, what's your go-to strategy? And there's plenty of examples of me saying this. It was the oscillation strategy. It worked pretty much most of the time. Not all the time, there's always exceptions no matter what, but it worked pretty well. But if you ask me that today, I don't have a good answer, because the reality of it is every single one of your SKUs should have a strategy designed for it, and it should adapt and change moment by moment. Good luck. Can't do it. So what you don't need is more strategies. What you need to do is take a step back and say, well, what if we designed a model that could understand what is true, clearly define success in a way that is dynamic, because things change rapidly, and then utilizing this information to decide what behaviors to enact to close the gap. And so how we do that is actually conceptually relatively simple. How we define success. This is so important. We have to take a more nuanced approach when we're measuring the success of our repricing tools. It can no longer be my sales went up. It can no longer be my buy box ownership percentage is higher, because I can hack both those. If I take your prices by 20%, guess what you're going to get? More sales, more buy box ownership percentage, but are you happy? Of course not. Instead, you need to take a more macro approach and say, well, what was the potential here? And did we maximize that potential? Here's how we do this. We calculate something called the optimal price. It's an actual dollar amount, and it fluctuates. We recalculate this moment after moment after moment. Every time a price change comes through, we go, is that still true? What's important about this is if you go from like a Q3 to a Q4 and you're selling in toys, shouldn't your price be higher? Well, yes, but role-based don't do that. They don't factor in these things. And so we're able to understand how is that fluctuating, supply, demand, all these different things, and we can reallocate this. What's interesting about this is in our data set, we show that most of the time the optimal price is higher than the current buy box. Well, that initially I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That seems cool, but why? Well, if you think about it from an economics perspective, if you have a lot of competition, what happens to your price? You have downward pressure. So Maven, funny enough, because it has a target and unique behaviors and all that good stuff, is able to raise that price. And so if you look on X, Twitter, whatever, you'll see people showing screenshots of getting sales higher than the buy box. Well, why is that? We're essentially relieving that pressure, and we have unique ways of doing that. And so that's kind of an interesting behavior. So, okay, we know where we want to go. We've defined success. And then we need to understand what's true here. This is where game theory really comes into play. I think it's a beautiful model for understanding the world we operate in. But game theory as an algorithm is actually not that complex. Game theory, by the way, just states if you and I are going to take turns competing, and I don't know what you're going to do, well, I'm going to default to behaving, for lack of a better term. And if you behave with me, I'll continue behaving with you. But the moment you misbehave towards me, I will do the same thing. That's like the optimal algorithm for game theory. Like, yeah, it gets way more complicated, but just conceptually understanding game theory, that's it. So game theory by itself is not really enough, because I can hard code that into rules all day long, but it's a good concept and model. And so what we do is we study every one of your competitors to understand, are they going to compete or non-compete? And in what ways must we compete to win? So for some sellers, I may need to be 5 cents below the buy box to pull the buy box. Well, that's good to know. So we store all this information and we intentionally forget it and relearn it, because your competition will change over time. Every seller's in the same life cycle of their inventory. It's always the same, right? It's when I first come into stock, I'm very conservative. I want profitability. As time goes on, I'm willing to lower my price and become more aggressive because I need my capital back. Makes sense. But every one of your competitors is in a different stage of this life cycle. And so we can understand where are they at, where do we want to go, and then what behaviors do we need to utilize to close that gap. So that's essentially what Maven's doing. And again, you're going from 15 to 30 settings with your rule base to 1, which is how do you want to set your min prices? Because really that's all you should care about. Max prices we dynamically set for you. Historically, those are really hard to set manually because you either set it too low or too high, and they, again, should fluctuate. So our dynamic max prices will actually change in real time. You know, if we saw that the buy box was getting suppressed at 42, but now the buy box somehow got added at 43, great, let's factor that in. Let's raise that. Or, right, so we can fluctuate with the market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it's obviously very complex on the back end, but your tool really simplifies it.
Yes.
And like you said, complexity, speed, those are two big challenges when it comes to repricing. So Maven really helps with the complexity piece.
Yeah.
Talk about the speed.
Yeah, speed is awesome. So here's what's cool. At the time we were rebuilding Aura, the old API, which is what all the software developers use, was getting deprecated, meaning they said you have until this date and it will stop working. So we did what every other developer does because we're all lazy, and we said, you know what, we're going to swap out the endpoints because that's actually the right decision, right? You don't introduce too many new things. So that's what we did for legacy, but we were already re-architecting new Aura 1.0. So we said, let's take a few weeks here and really dig through the documentation on the new API and see what's possible, what's new here. And we stumbled on something that's not readily obvious, but has enabled incredible features. So we call this feature hyperdrive. So for context, we've always had instant repricing. I think if you're getting anything less than or slower than instant, it's kind of irrelevant. But instant doesn't truly mean instant. It means instant in our system. We're not delaying you, slowing you down. However, when we submit that price update to Amazon, it's going to take 1.5 to 2 minutes on average for it to come back and be confirmed and reflected. So instant really means 1.5 to 2 minutes. Now with hyperdrive, we found for up to 50 SKUs on an account, there's a technical engineering limit there. We can do that full round trip, not in 1.5 to 2 minutes. We can do it in less than 10 seconds. So you're talking about a theoretical 12x increase in speed. So what happens when you marry Maven with hyperdrive? Amazing things, as it turns out.
That's amazing. And what about using it on mobile? Because I know that that's a pain point for a lot of sellers. They're on the go, or they're in their warehouse, or things like that.
Yes.
And they want to be able to access apps on the go. So talk about your mobile optimization.
Yeah. So we made a strategic decision because it turns out supporting full native mobile is actually a lot of work. You have to hire a whole engineer for that. It's a whole other code base. And we're like, oh, that kind of sucks because you want to move fast, right? And so there's this thing called a PWA, a progressive web app. Basically, you design it for mobile, all these good things, and it just works on mobile. And so this is actually a live account here. This is our demo account. So even support's added there. Everything we can do on the computer, I can do right here on the go. And what's nice about that is there's no delay between when we add a feature to the web app versus here because it's all the same. And so funny enough, when we started to redesign everything, we said, well, no, we have to be mobile first because so many sellers are out and about. And it pains me to see somebody post on Twitter a screenshot of them on their laptop in their car doing RA saying, I'm updating my pricing. But your phone's already in your right hand, right? Because you're probably scanning inventory. Why not just use your thumb to do exactly what you needed to do anyways on the aisle instead of having to wait? So everything you can do on mobile, which is awesome. The way it works is you essentially log in on the browser, add it to your home screen, and it will perform and act the exact same way as a native mobile app will.
Okay. And then as far as the types of sellers that are using Aura, so you mentioned RA or online arbitrage as well, private label sellers, who do you recommend, or who's kind of the target market or ideal customer that would want to use Aura and find a lot of value out of it?
Yeah, so we're mainly on the reseller side, so we don't really support the private label. That's its own kind of model. Very interesting stuff though. So we're mainly OA, RA, wholesale. So depending on the type of wholesale you do, because there are cases where you're 100% map pricing and your prices don't change anyways. You probably don't need a repricer if you can't change your price. Turns out if you have map enabled on your listings, you're just going to sell that map. That's just kind of how that, remember that downward pressure we were talking about? That's kind of how that works. But yeah, we're pretty heavy on RAOA and pretty solid on wholesale because you still have a lot of listings that are not map enforced. Yeah, we're mainly on the reseller side.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I just wanted to invite everybody, feel free to put some questions in. Now you have an overview of the tool. And then Dylan, if you want to dive in and go ahead and screen share and show a little bit about how the tool works so we can see it in action. And then we can also talk about how to enable this integration both in RestockPro and in Aura for anyone who's looking to get started. But again, feel free to put any questions in the chat or the Q&A section and we will get to those.
So the account I just showed you on my phone, this is the exact same one. So that's kind of cool. So it's like live data, which is nice. We have an internal OA account just for testing things. We like to alpha test things before we go to beta. So when I say we rebuilt Aura from the ground up, it's not just that we recoded everything. We also redesigned everything, because it turns out how you technically scale a product, like a software product, is not unlike how you can scale your design system. And so why does that matter? Well, there were features we wanted to add in Legacy Aura that, funny enough, as weird as it sounds, there was no place to put them. I know that sounds weird. You're like, just put it on the page. That actually doesn't work very well in software. That's how your product becomes very ugly very quickly. So we actually have a design system we follow here. So everything's like super thought out. And you'll notice, by the way, we're not packing in a ton of data here. There's actually a decent amount of white space. We do that intentionally because you need a hierarchy of information. It's really frustrating when you log into a tool and it's all the same. It's just you glaze over. Instead, you need to be able to see something above the fold, right? When I say above the fold, when I land on a page before I scroll, basically what I'm saying right now, this is above the fold. Well, I need to know the high level things first and foremost. And so whenever we go to design things, we say, well, what is the person likely attempting to do here when they come land on this page? Well, they probably want to see how their sales are going, ROI, all the good stuff. They might want to come here and see if certain listings are in certain situations. So show me the listings where I'm at my min price. Cool, I can go straight there and see those. But if they want to go deeper, let's say they're like, if something feels wrong or things are going great, what's happening? Well, I can scroll down to the performance section and say, okay, well, how many updates is Aura making for me? What's my buy box ownership percentage? How many units am I selling? You're going to see a lot more of this on this listing specific page, because that is the most data intense page. And that's where it took like 2 to 3 weeks of just design. Now, I like going through settings because settings are actually pretty fun. So previously on Legacy Aura, you only had one user. So if you had a VA, you had to share your login credentials, which is not really ideal. Now you have an organization and you have your team members. So you can actually add your VAs in here. Then, of course, you have your integrations. So you can actually jump in here, add that, which is awesome. What's so cool about this is so new for us. We now have a configuration section, which is like the coolest, nerdiest thing for us, because usually it's just like, do it. And now we're like, actually, there's some configurations here, right? And so depending on if you're using your average cost or your last cost, you choose that. And what's so cool about this, if for whatever reason you want to change, let's say you've been using your average, but you're like, I actually like using my last cost because they're fluctuating quite a bit. And that's a little bit better for me. Great. Choose last cost, hit resync. We'll then historically update all those listings for you. So we're just operating from that perspective to begin with, which is awesome. And of course, we look out to all. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on that note, Dylan, as you're talking about, importing costs and history, we do have a question about transitioning and importing data from another repricer. So if somebody is switching to Aura, would you import their last 90 days or what type of history would be imported?
Yeah. So what I would do then is, once you've connected your marketplace, I would then decide which one you're going to use. You can actually, because it's not that old, because your account's very new, you can actually just choose whichever cost method you want to use, and then hit resync, and we'll just hit all those for you. So that'll basically bring you up to speed immediately. Good. Yeah, great question. Great question. And then I don't really cover plan or preferences that much. There's not a ton in there right now. We're just North America, but looking to add all 20 marketplaces, so currency is built in very deeply. So we do have some sellers that are like, hey, I buy and sell in Canadian dollars. Wonderful. You should not be seeing USD anywhere. So you can actually choose basically the account level defaults in terms of what currency you're going to see. So we have all the major currencies in here, and we'll do that currency conversion for you as well. That will come in handy much later. Nice.
And this integration, just to clarify too, this integration between RestockPro and Aura, it does work for all the North American marketplaces. So US, Canada, Mexico, and then down the road, we hope to add Europe as well. But initially here, we at least have US, Mexico, and Canada.
Turns out the translation problems with adding new marketplaces is not the most seamless thing in the world. So, okay. So listings, this was one of the most toughest pages for sellers on Legacy, because you had a bunch of problems. You didn't really have filtering. You really had sorting. You couldn't customize it. So the whole horizontal scroll thing was like super cumbersome. Page was kind of slow. So again, we rebuilt everything. So we added 3 major features here. So the first one is, you as the user should be able to decide what you care about and what you don't care about. We surveyed 300 of our users, actually talked to each one, and said, what do you prioritize? Everyone was completely different. The moment everyone's different, that tells me we need to have it to be customized. So you decide what columns you want to see, which ones you want to hide, and in what order you want to see these in. Because again, everybody's different. And what's nice about that is by removing the things I don't care about, I avoid this horizontal scroll for the most part. And this is per user and configured at the user level, meaning if I go to my phone and I'm logged into my account, it's going to reflect there. If my VA has their own account and they're making their own unique changes, it's not going to override what I have here. It's very persistent, which is good. Another thing is those filters I was talking about. So now you can actually stack filters. So if I want to see which of my listings am I using hyperdrive on, where I am using Maven. Cool, that one right there. Perfect. Now, what's nice about this is we're actually doing this in the address bar. So if you're a nerd like me, you can kind of hack that a little bit. You can save this basically as a bookmark. And if you want to come back to this pre-configured stack of filters, great, not a problem, super easy. And then another thing is actually search. This is the most impactful for me because we had sellers that would say, cool, I want to see all my Nike things. Well, in Legacy Aura, you could not do that. You could only basically scroll through everything here or search for one particular SKU or ASIN. Well, that doesn't really work. So we introduced something called keyword group search. So this will search the product title, SKU, and the ASIN. So what's cool about this is if I type in Yeti, if I can type, awesome. Pretty straightforward, it's in the product title. But you notice we are actually embedding things in the SKU. Okay, so if I type in Walmart, and these are not active, so let me zoom out here. There's all my Walmart stuff. So depending on how you encode your SKUs, you can find these things more easily. And notice how fast this is too, right? We rebuilt this so dramatically faster than it used to be. And again, we're doing this search actually in the address bar. So if I remove Yeti up here, type in Walmart, there's Walmart. So again, if you want to be a power user dork like myself, you can create your own search things. So I actually use Raycast to do this, which is pretty fun. Okay, and then last thing here is actually just global search. So I think more software should be keyboard led. I hate touching my mouse. I don't know about everyone else here. So, you know, we're playing around with this concept of a command palette. This is not live quite yet, but you can hit the / anywhere and your cursor's in the search bar. I can type in Yeti, hit my up and down arrows to select the exact one I want, hit enter, and I go directly to that SKU page. But what's nice about this is I can move super fast throughout my account, no matter what I'm doing. Now, this is the specific listing page I was talking about. This is the most complicated page. Why? Because I'm trying to give you dramatically more data than you had in Legacy without it feeling overwhelming. Because again, you're going to come here for a few different reasons. Either you already have a task you want to complete, in which case your tasks are pretty much all going to be in this little modal here, in this card, right? You're going to change your settings in some way. Okay, well, you shouldn't have to scroll. You should just be able to do that. You might want to come here and just say, I just want to check in, see how things are going. Okay, well, am I in the buy box, out of the buy box? How are my sales going? What are my strategies, settings, blah, blah, blah. Great, I can do all that without moving. But to give you more data, for the times when you need it, that's a hard challenge. So we solved it in two different ways. The first one is layers. So we have different layers of information here. The simplest one is just the hover state. Sounds simple, but it's actually pretty unique because these will grow and expand, or these will expand and shrink as they need to. So, you know, profit's pretty straightforward. If I turn on something called auto refresh, by the way, we won't see this because this is not currently live. This page's data will update every 5 seconds. The dashboard does this. The listings page does this as well. So if this is a really active SKU, we'll just see the data change in real time. So if my price goes from $40 to $41, I'll actually see the profit change itself as well in real time. Because again, you shouldn't be making decisions based on outdated data. And I'm sorry, but 10-minute-old data is outdated to me now. It's got to be as real time as possible. So we get that. So every 5 seconds, we're checking for that. Now, where this is useful is actually inventory. So I have seen this expand to 13 different inventory statuses. Yes, that is possible, and it is overwhelming. But you can see in this case, cool, I have 51 units. But what's the breakdown? That actually matters here. It's not that I don't have any in stock. It's actually have 1 pending transfer and 50 FC processing. Well, that's good to know. I've been told by copious users that we update our inventory data faster than Seller Central does. So that's kind of nice. Okay, so that's layers. There's another one here. If I click on the buy box where the price would be, I actually get a pop-up here. Or actually, that's going to be out. Let me jump to Yeti here. So currently in the buy box at 85, if I click on this, though, I will see all the current offers. This is all the current sellers on that listing. So what's cool is I can say, okay, cool. Where am I in relation to the market? Am I on the lower end or the higher end? Turns out we're all literally at 85. That's hilarious. Well, this person's back ordered, but if I'm like, oh, this person's winning for whatever reason, I can click on their seller ID and go straight to their storefront. I know exactly who that is. And again, as real time as we can get it. So that's kind of the layering approach. But then we have this, I call it a pyramid, right? Because when you first land here again above the fold, I want to see high level, how are things going? Without me having to change, scroll down, I know I'm in the buy box where my sales are at, all this good stuff, but I may need to analyze this product deeper. So I can do that. I can go down deeper and say, what's the rank, how are fees looking, all this good stuff. But then I get to the performance section, which we saw on the dashboard. But it's got one additional thing here that's so important, which is price. This is your price over a period of time. It's like your own personal keepa, right? We had a lot of sellers say, hey, I'm making changes to my strategies and I think it's going well. Well, you shouldn't have to think. You should know, right? We got to move past the world of thinking. We got to be data-driven here, but that's kind of hard. And I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, we have to take a more nuanced approach when we're defining success for our repricing tool. It can't just be my buy box ownership percentage is higher. It doesn't work anymore. So this grid of 4 charts lets me zoom out and do that very easily. I can see, okay, well, is Aura doing its work? Because if I'm getting no sales and there's no price updates, well, I know kind of what I need to go fix. Okay, well, my buy box ownership is going up, not really getting more sales here. Looks like there's not a ton of competition. Okay, cool. And okay, I can see Maven's jumping the price around, which is a good thing. I think we're fine, right? So, and you'll notice, by the way, the settings pane is scrolling down with us. Why? Because by the time you're down here, you're probably going to make a decision. Change your min price, change your strategy, turn on hyperdrive, what have you. Just do it here. Don't scroll back up. So as fast as we can make things for you to get tasks done in the application, we're going to do. So this is where people spend a lot of time. One of the most impactful areas. And I mentioned hyperdrive. We kind of talked about that. Here's the complexity of hyperdrive. I just turned it off. And I just triggered it to turn on. That's it. That's all that it is. Let me refresh this here. Hyperdrive is just a toggle. And so with a single toggle, I'm able to, in theory, increase my repricing speeds by 12x. Right. So
Now,
Maven. Yeah, go
now,
ahead.
Dylan, this
Yeah,
is a lot of information for maybe somebody who's not as technical or as savvy with software. So I know that your team is amazing with onboarding, training.
Yes.
I'm sure once people get into it, obviously you've kind of used a chapter out of Apple's design. So it's very simple, the UX, the experience.
Yep.
But I do want to say that I know Dylan said that one of their pillars is customer success. So if anybody's feeling intimidated or overwhelmed or, not sure if they'll be able to, jump into this, his team is there to back you up. I know RestockPro, same with our team, for FBA inventory management. We're here to back you up, onboard you, train you in any way possible, to help you get up to speed quickly, whether you're transitioning from another tool to ours or if it's your first time using a tool.
Yeah.
But for newer sellers or maybe sellers who, are just dipping their toe in the water with Amazon, software is not always accessible. It can be very expensive. So tell us what Aura is doing to try to make this more accessible to new sellers, to those that are still in kind of a growth early stage.
Yeah. So there's 2 pieces to accessibility we've been focusing in on. When we first launched 1.0, historically, we've only had one pricing tier, which is 97. Everybody pays the same price. That actually doesn't work, turns out. Welcome to starting your first software company. You learn a lot. And so we introduced these cutting edge features, hyperdrive, Maven, all this good stuff, rebuilt the entire platform. And we launched Pro, so Aura Pro, that was $497. Only that tier had access to Maven. We did that intentionally because when you're going from one tier to many tiers, you have no data to make good decisions. So you kind of have to pick a route, get all the feedback, and quickly make changes, which is exactly what we did. So we had a lot of sellers come in and say, $497, way too high. I said, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Let's bring that down to $397. Oh, by the way, the jump from 97 to 397 is kind of big. We should have 197. Yeah, agree. Did that. And oh, by the way, everybody wants access to Maven. Yeah, I kind of get that. I would too. So we don't care how much you pay us. You get access to Maven. You get access to hyperdrive. Now, different usage levels, so different credits, if you will. Just because somebody doing $5,000 a month doesn't need as many Maven listings or hyperdrive credits as somebody doing, $1 million a month. So it's still cut up in a way that makes sense for that section of user, that segment of user. But then we kind of had this problem where we had a lot of people get it started with what I will call cheaper tools because they were very affordable, and they got frustrated when they came to us because they said, 97 just felt like a large getting started price, and I want to use your tool, but I feel like I can't afford it. So I have to use this other tool and it's frustrating. I don't like that. Because as a software company, as a startup ourselves, we always qualified for the startup programs at all the tools we use. They're like, hey, pay like 80% less just because you're brand new and you don't have the funds for it. I'm like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Why don't we just do the same? So we launched something called the early stage program. So it's super simple to qualify. If you're doing less than 10 grand a month in revenue and you haven't used Aura, you qualify. That's it. 10 grand a month. That's it. We're doing this because you should still get the value of this cutting edge technology without having to wait until you can afford it. And so you get access to Maven, Hyperdrive. Our support team will personally onboard you. By the way, we don't check how much you're paying us when you ask to be onboarded. We just onboard you. We don't care. Even during the free trial, before you give us a credit card, I don't care. I want you to succeed. And so you get access to all that for 27 bucks a month. And I call it a program, not a tier, because it's 12 months. So we give you 12 months on that tier because I don't want it to feel like, oh, I got 2 months to figure out the business before like they charge me 97. That's too much pressure. It's already enough pressure starting a new business. So we're like, no, we'll give you a whole year. And if you don't go above 10K, great, you're fine. Now, if after 12 months you're still under 10K, yeah, you go to 97. But here's what's cool. If in the 12 months, if you outgrow the 10K, which I hope everyone does because I want to see you all succeed. If you do, you go to another tier. But what we're going to do for you is we're going to give you a 50% discount on the first 3 months of whatever tier you go to. So we're smoothing out the cost curve. So people used to say, hey, when do you recommend people to start getting repricing tools? Well, the only reason why I had an answer outside of immediately was because there was a cost of entry. At 27 bucks and a 14-day free trial, I'm like, honestly, like as long as you're sending in consistent inventory, you should consider it. And what's nice is I'm not going to ask you for a credit card. So if you jump in and don't see results, tell me first and foremost. And number two, you didn't lose anything, which is good, right? Like we're not going to hold you hostage. So for us, we want to make the technology like AI and things like this, just amazing software products available to all, like mobile, that everybody gets mobile. Like we're not going to gate mobile. Like you should just get it. And we're trying to make the modern software accessible to the newer seller. Because a lot of times that's just not the case. A lot of times historically, AI, things like that have been reserved for hundreds of dollars per month. And it's become kind of a status symbol. And we don't need that in this space. What we need is real innovation and pushing the envelope here.
Right. And just goes along with your mission to help Amazon sellers succeed and grow on Amazon, and their plan will grow with them as they grow. So It's great to have that entry level plan. I'll go ahead and just share my screen real quick, just to recap, especially for anybody who just joined a little bit late. And again, we'll be sending this out over recording via email, but just a few other things to touch on, as well as our special offers that we promised. Again, this integration between RestockPro and Aura, it will save time. It'll sync your costs of goods, information from RestockPro to Aura to really just ensure that your replenishment tool and your repricer are looking at the same information so that you can make better business decisions and really understand your profits. So for those who are currently using RestockPro, you can find the setting in the integrations tab under your settings to just toggle that Aura integration on. And again, we'll be sure to send out a link with details on how to do that as well. And to recap some of the features and things that Dylan talked about, is that Aura really helps to handle the speed and complexity of repricing. So they have that hyperdrive feature helping you to reprice in about 10 seconds. And a lot of other amazing features. Maven helps you really determine that optimal price, the game theory to help you beat out the competition. So a lot of amazing features, and again, at a great entry level price. So if you're ready to get started, again, here's a screenshot where it shows how to get started in RestockPro, as well as in Aura. You do need to enable both those integrations in both tools so that they'll communicate with one another. But as far as the exclusive offers go, for anybody who's not using RestockPro right now, you can get a 21-day free trial and 50% off your first 6 months when you combine RestockPro with Aura. And then with Aura, I know Dylan already mentioned the 14-day free trial, but for anybody who's already using RestockPro, you'll also get another month for free. Just mention Ecom Engine to their support team via the chat whenever you sign up, and they'll be sure to apply that extra month for free. But yeah, I just wanted to open it up to any questions that anybody might have, or anything additional that you want to add, Dylan.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think it's exciting that more software companies like us are starting to integrate and kind of partner up and provide additional value. So no, I'm very excited. I've been wanting this kind of environment for a while, and we're finally in a position to execute now that we've rebuilt the entire company. Turns out that takes a little bit of time, but but no, excited, happy to answer any questions anybody has. After this at 2 p.m. we do our live office hours. So if we do run out of time, go Aura.com/office hours. Office hours is all one word. Casey on support and I go live for an hour, and we just have like a professor level open office hours. We're just like, come with all your questions, we will answer them all. So if we run out of time for whatever reason, you can see us there.
Good. Well, I think we had one question about the auto refresh feature. I think somebody may have seen that on the slide. So maybe if you can talk about that.
Yes. So auto refresh. I'm gonna actually share my screen here so you can see.
Okay, so I'll stop.
Exactly what this looks like. So get out of here. Let's go to Lodge again. So auto refresh. We have this on 4 different pages. Essentially, it's just an option. So you can say, I want this on. And so how auto refresh works is every 5 seconds, the front end of the application is saying, great, is there new data that the back end has that you're not seeing? Because typically with software, when you load the page, that's when it refreshes it. Well, we said that's not good enough anymore, because if you're loading a page every 5 to 10 minutes, and let's say I loaded this, went and grabbed some coffee, came back, I'm like, cool, like let me analyze this data, make a decision. That's already outdated. And honestly, it could have been 15 minutes because the kids, the dog, the cats, whatever, right? And so you can turn this on and you'll just see the data change in real time. And so do I have a good example here? I might be able to do this with the Yeti. Okay, so I can probably do this with the Yeti. So we're going to turn on auto refresh. So we got it on. We're going to use hyperdrive. So again, we're going to update price every 10-ish seconds here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the min price. Actually, I'm going to change the max price here to 84. So I'm going to do that. We're going to wait. Now, this is the price that we're looking at here. If it's flashing, that means it's pending. If it's not flashing, that means it's accepted. It may not. No, it should take us out of the buy box here. I'm just going to force it. There you go. Cool. So that is accepted. So that's hyperdrive pulled together. And by the way, I wasn't refreshing the page, right? It just did it autonomously, which is good. So that's your auto refresh. Now I can fix this, of course. Like, actually, I want you to do this. It's probably not going to change it because we just pulled it down, although that could be the case. So what's nice about auto refresh is that real time, as real time as we can get it, we're refreshing the data. So like even down here, the profit value changed in real time, all that good stuff. So again, as real time data as we can get it.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
All right. So Sam has a question. He's a longtime Aura user, but doesn't know much about RestockPro. Thanks for joining, Sam. So just a quick summary on what our program does for sellers. So RestockPro is an FBA inventory management system that helps you to know what to restock and when based on sales velocity and about 70 other data points. As I mentioned at the initial point of this call is as of this week, we now also support the data behind the low inventory level fee that Amazon just rolled out. So you'll be able to see your historical days of supply, your minimum inventory levels. But other features within RestockPro include pretty much your whole workflow from creating purchase orders, creating shipments, reports on inventory turn. You can also do kitting or bundling, and we have a great kit optimizer that helps you to determine profitable kits that you could build. And so it's just some amazing data, and we would love to just be able to do like a one-on-one demo and talk about your business needs and how we might be able to help. So definitely reach out to us and we can chat.
And for context, I used RestockPro when I was a seller and loved it. So this is full circle for me now being able to integrate. So highly recommend.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, as Dylan mentioned, they're always open with their office hours on a regular basis. So you can find him on his website, goaura.com. And then you can reach out to us at ecomengine.com through our contact page. but we'll be sure to send everybody an email with the recording and some more details about this integration. So you can just reply to that as well if you have any questions. But thank you everybody for joining, and thanks Dylan for your demo of Aura. And yeah, we're really looking forward to getting some more users on board, and just getting any feedback from everybody as well. I know both of our teams, we love to get feedback from users, what's working well, any ideas you have. So always feel free to give us a buzz, and we'd be happy to chat anything Amazon with you.
Awesome, Colleen. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Thanks everybody.